Hello, social media. I'd like to draw your attention to a story that I believe is coding for a massive false flag event in the very near future. So, the story was reported in the mainstream media on the 22nd of August, in which it was claimed that a purple Rolls Royce had struck a 66-year-old pensioner in London near the Australian War Memorial. It went on to report the price of the car as being £250,000, that it was registered in Qatar. Now, something in this story was a red flag, and many of us who were researching singled it out that something was quite off with this story and that we thought it was coded. So the police had the evidence of the actual event via the many CCTV cameras, and the person responsible had also awaited the police, and yet they were calling for witnesses, which made no sense, but it did give them the reason to get maximum mainstream coverage of this event. The fact that they included how much the car cost also stood out as a very unnecessary inclusion. Now, car accidents and people getting knocked over in London happens all the time, okay? And you might get an obscure small paragraph in a paper on page 12 or wherever, but it doesn't make headline news. So we knew that something was going on. Now, looking at the pictures is another red flag, because I've noticed that the photographer was Jeremy Selwyn, who's also the photographer who took the pictures for many events such as Grenfell, the attacks in London, the market attacks, lots of pictures of the royals, lots of coverage of political events, and all the latest pictures of Boris. Apparently he's good friends with Boris. He's been given awards for being the best photographer used by the elite. So we can see he's an inside photographer. So for this man to photograph this Rolls Royce event had definitely had more significance than just a matter of a car hitting a pedestrian. Say that happens all the time in London. So my interpretations of what I believe will be a false flag event, and I think it could cause a possible war with Iran, and I believe that this article was the coding for it. So first of all, the purple Rolls Royce. As we know, purple alludes to royalty. The article also mentioned that it was near Buckingham Palace. It also stated that the price tag of the car was £250,000. Now, if you go onto the Rolls Royce website, they state that the actual price is £258,000. So it looks like this is pointing at a date, the 25th of August. So at first I thought it might be linked to the carnival, because the carnival's been going since 1966. And the man who's reportedly hit was age 66. But then on that date of the 25th of August, the UK announced that a third warship is to join two others in the Gulf of Hormuz. That warship was HMS Defender, which apparently had a 18-month refit of two Rolls-Royce gas turbines, which the Department of Defence paid Rolls-Royce £3.8 million for. You know, this indicates a royal vessel, like purple Rolls-Royce. So we've got a vehicle. So we've got a royal vessel. Okay, so this is obviously HMS Defender is a royal vessel. Now, it also states that it was registered in Qatar. Now, as we know, that Qatar are in the thick of the events in the escalating conflict in the Gulf, and they also host the biggest US military base in the Middle East. The story also mentioned that it occurred by the Australian War Memorial, and then we've got stories on the same day about two Australian warships reportedly are going to be joining the UK and the US in the Gulf. So it looks like this is the story that they're pointing at with this event. Now, What about the man aged 66? 40 years ago, 66 hostages were taken in the American embassy in Iran. A further six were rescued when they took shelter in the Canadian embassy, the homes of the Canadian embassy people. And they were rescued by the CIA. Now, the CIA concocted a cover story of a Hollywood movie which was created by Studio 6, which didn't really exist. And the movie was called Argo, after the ship that was in Jason and the Argonauts. So in doing this, they were able to smuggle out the other six as actors. So this article tells me there's a massive false flag operation that's about to happen in the area. Now, there's also the Economist front cover, which I decoded, and I think there's a video on YouTube about that, where there was only one purple icon in the whole of the images of all the icons, and that's smack in the centre of the Economist magazine, which I believe they give us details of what's going to happen from the following year rather than the year that they give the magazine cover out. So you can go and check that out. As we know, and I mean, it's become clear that the actions of the West, and with the US at the forefront, obviously, are for one purpose only. And they've tried to cripple the regime with sanctions by shrinking their currency, hoping that people would overthrow the government, which hasn't happened. So now we've got the US, the UK, Australia and Bahrain are ganging up. They're going to use blockades on exports, which will result in a false flag event, which they will turn into a catastrophe. It's going to be a catastrophe for many, many people, but obviously not for the war machine, with Trump selling billions of dollars of weapons to the Saudis. So this is what I'd like to share with you. I believe that this was coded for a massive false flag about to happen in the Gulf. Thank you for listening. I'm Annie Logical. Stay safe.